to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we lie.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for August 26th, 2017. We're in the 8th year of Chungi, the 7th month, and the 5th day by the heavenly calendar. My name is Tim Elder. I'm sitting here in place of the second king of Cheonryuguk, Hyungjin Moon. I'd like to start today, as usual, with the weather. And it's 48 degrees today in the Cheonryuguk area. And partly cloudy skies, but almost clear, actually, as I look up into the night sky. Beautiful stars out there. And we're going up to 75 degrees today. Mostly sunny and pleasant is the word for today's weather. Tomorrow, Sunday, will also be pleasant, partly sunny and pleasant, with a high of 76. Tonight, getting down to 49. And tomorrow night getting down to 52. So we're still in that autumn weather, 2 or 3 or 4 degrees below the normal average highs for this year, for this time of year. All right, let's go to Rima. Of course, I should mention the hurricane. Hurricane Harvey made landfall in Texas, a little bit northeast of Corpus Christi late last night, and it made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. Now that it is over land, it has been downgraded to a Category 3, but it is moving very, very slowly, and so a lot of rain is expected. Now that area is expecting 40 inches, as much as 40 inches of rain. And we'll be getting into a more in-depth coverage of that in the news section of this broadcast. So first of all, I want to go to our Rimas. My Rima this morning from the Bible is Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 1 and 2. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Now, thou son of man, wilt thou judge the bloody city? Yea, thou shalt show her all her abominations. Now, thou son of man, wilt thou judge the bloody city? Yea, thou shalt show her all her abominations. And my selection from the Cheonsongyong this morning is on page 757. This is the first selection in Book 6, Our Life in the Spiritual Realm, Chapter 1, The Path of Life, 756, actually, I guess. No, 7 is right, 757. It is common saying that human beings come into this world and eventually leave. And this applies even to the most eminent people of history. You need to be aware that the continuing influence of heavenly principles in the flow of history applies to us even at this moment. We shall come and we also shall come and eventually leave. We do not know by what internal affinities or through what relationships we came to be here, but we know that the reality is we came into this world, have struggled with all kinds of phenomenon and ideological concepts, and will eventually depart from this world. These words were spoken by Father in 1959. So a great deal happens during that time, from the time that we are born into the world and eventually leave the world, go to the next stage of our eternal life, which is in the spirit world. Father has taught us that human life actually consists of 3 stages. First, there is the water stage, in which we are in the amniotic fluid of our mother's womb, and then we are there for a certain time, and then we are born into this world where we are surrounded by air, and we breathe the air. And then the next stage of our life is that we go to the eternal world, where we breathe not air, but we breathe love. And Father said that just as when we were in our mother's wombs, we had lungs, but we did not use them. But they were there in preparation for what was to come next, in preparation for our being introduced into the world where we have to breathe the air into our lungs and extract the oxygen from the air, and then exhale out into the air around us. And so also we have within us now what we need in order to survive and in order to breathe love, that is, in the next world. In the spirit world, we do not breathe air, but rather we breathe love. We take in love, and then we also give out love. We give out love, and we take in love. And that ability is just as our lungs are developed in the womb, also our ability to breathe love, to receive love, and then to give love and to receive love. This ability has to be developed in this world where we are now. And just as a fetus or an unborn child, shall we say, let's not call it a fetus, an unborn child, if an unborn child is not able to develop its lungs properly, then it will have a very difficult time surviving in the world, in the physical world, where it must, in the earthly world, where it has to breathe air. And so also, if we do not develop our capacity to give love and to receive love in this world, then we'll have a very difficult time in the spirit world, and that will be called hell. And that will be that kind of a status, that kind of a situation will be called hell. And so here, while we are here, during the time that we are born into this world and the time that we leave, we are trying to develop that capacity to give love and to receive love, to give love and to receive love, because it is that ability that will allow us to have a full life in the spirit world when we go there. And Ezekiel talks about judging. It talks about judging, and I believe it was Proverbs 31:9, was it? It also talks about judging righteously. I believe that is the correct reference. And also here in Ezekiel, God encourages judgment. People often quote Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, "Judge not, that ye not be judged." But clearly, God does want us to judge righteously, and this is part of love. Also, this is part of the process of giving love and receiving love, because we are not in this world alone, and we relate to others, and as we relate to others, we need to do so with love. And love takes many forms. God's judgment is a form of His love to us. God's judgment is a form of His love to us. So, for example, when you have a situation such as the Han Mother right now, can we say, "Oh, let's not judge her, lest we be judged"? I don't think so. I think it is incumbent on those of us who, by the grace of God, whose eyes have been opened and to what happened after Father's ascension. It is incumbent on us to spread that information to our brothers and sisters and to the rest of the world, so that they can make a decision for themselves, so that their eyes can be open, and then they can make a decision that is a very important decision, because it will affect their situation in life and the situation, their lives in this world and also in the next, and the situation of their descendants as well. True Father came to this world, and he brought the new expression of God's truth in the form of the principle, and also he came to this world to establish blessed central families who would be in God's lineage, the lineage of God that was to have been established at the time of Adam in the Garden of Eden, but could not be done at that time, and then it also could not be established in the time of Jesus either. Finally, after 6,000 biblical years, it was established. And Father has created many millions, hundreds of millions of blessed central families on this earth during his time in the earthly world. And then after he left, Satan made his move and attempted to destroy all of those families, take them back to his lineage. And he had a huge success in doing that because he had a co-conspirator in the Han Mother who chose to bow to him, to Satan, rather than to the heavenly lineage. And so in February 2013, false foundation day was performed in Cheongpyeong and around the world by internet broadcast, Satan had a huge victory. And then, no matter how much Satan may try, he cannot completely destroy God's providence. God always has a way to make a comeback. And God guided the second king out of the palace, out of Cheongpyeong and out of East Garden to northeastern Pennsylvania, to a place where initially he was alone except for Kuk Jinim's family, and to reconnect with Father and to begin the process of recovering all those blessed central families that were taken by Satan. And Satan could not stop this because the second king laid a foundation of absolute obedience, absolute filial piety. And so Father was able to guide him, God was able to guide him, and the second king was able to connect with Father in the Pennsylvania woods. And so then 3 years from that time, 3 years from February 2013, there was a process for people to be able to return to True Father's authority without losing their initial status, without losing the blessing that was given to them by Father, until Father's birthday in February 2016. And following that birthday, of course, people are still able to return to True Father's authority, but not in the blessing that was originally given to them by Father, but in a new status, given to them by Father through the second king. And that process is continuing today. And so if anyone who is watching this broadcast who has not been able to return to True Father's authority, or who would like to receive the blessing for the first time, please contact us here at the Sanctuary Church, and we'll be able to guide you. sanctuary-pa.org. You can go to that website and click on the tab that says Blessing, and it will give you all the explanation that you need to know. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with news, Harvey, and a few other things after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 26th of 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And we are all praying for the safety of people in the Texas coast area as they deal with the Hurricane Harvey. Hurricanes are among the strongest forces of nature, and a big one is hitting Texas right now. Last night it came onto land as a Category 4 hurricane, It's been downgraded now to a Category 3, but that is still, even a Category 3 is a pretty strong hurricane, and especially this one because it is so slow moving. It is only moving at about 10 miles an hour, and so the time in which it is affecting that area is going to be extended. And for that reason, a huge amount of rain is expected, as much as 40 inches in some places is the expected amount. Also, there's the storm surge, which we'll see in a minute. Last night, it was up to 13 feet above ground level. Can you imagine that? 13 feet. Wow, that's more than twice my height. That's an amazing a storm surge that rushes onto land, and because of the slow movement of the hurricane, that water level is expected to remain for several days. Let's go through the New York Times article that was posted late last night, I believe. Corpus Christi, Texas. Hurricane Harvey made landfall on the central Texas coast as a Category 4 storm late Friday, according to the National Hurricane Center, which warned of catastrophic flooding from the storm surge and torrential rains. The eye of the storm swept ashore with a 130-mile per hour winds at about 9:45 p.m. between Port Aransas and Port O'Connor, just northeast of Corpus Christi, but as the center of the storm moved to the northeast toward Victoria and other inland cities, the danger was just starting. Quote, even though Harvey has made landfall, the rainfall threat is only beginning, the National Hurricane Center said in a Twitter message. Later, the storm made a second landfall on the northeastern shore of Copano Bay. The hurricane was downgraded to a Category 3 with 125-mile-an-hour winds. Within an hour of landfall, I don't know if people have never experienced these kinds of winds. The winds themselves, of course, are dangerous, but even more, all sorts of any kind of debris that has been left on the ground or that has not been bolted down or something like that becomes a projectile. You can just go flying through the air at 100 miles an hour, and if you get hit by that, it'll kill you instantly. And also it'll go through windows and glass, and this is why people board up their windows before these hurricanes come. Within an hour of landfall, there were reports of major damage in Corpus Christi and north of there. The city manager in Rockport told the ABC News affiliate in Corpus Christi that at least 2 people were trapped inside collapsed buildings. Now, let's pray for the safety of those people. The Hurricane Center warned that the storm surge would peak between 9 to 13 feet above ground level in the Corpus Christi area. Rainfall, it said, could total as much as 40 inches. Because the storm was moving slowly, damage was expected to be more severe than if it had hit the land at a faster clip. Due to the slow motion of Harvey and a prolonged period of onshore flow, the Hurricane Center said, water levels will remain elevated for several days. Forecasters called it the first major hurricane to hit the United States in nearly 12 years. Among the damage that was expected to trail Hurricane Harvey, downed walls and power lines, roofless businesses, and unanchored mobile homes, electricity could be unavailable for weeks. Up and down the 370-mile Texas coast from Port Arthur to Brownsville, there were fears of the type of destruction left by hurricanes in Texas about a decade ago. Governor Greg Abbott asked for federal help, and President Trump obliged late Friday by signing a disaster proclamation for the state. The effect of these proclamations is to make federal funds available. Residents in the Corpus Christi area had spent much of the day scrambling to evacuate, while the millions living in the Houston area were given contradictory guidance from the authorities on whether to leave or stay put. Texas Medical Center, one of the largest medical complexes in the world, is in Houston, and officials there awaited the worst with a full complement of patients on site. We are hunkered down, said William McKeon, the center's president and chief executive, speaking by phone from his office as the hurricane made landfall about 200 miles southwest of the city. In nearby coastal Galveston, about 120 patients remained at the University of Texas Medical Branch's Jenny Seeley Hospital on Friday night, said Chris Smith Gonzalez, a media relations officer. The hospital opened last year and was built to withstand a significant hurricane, he said, after Hurricane Ike caused severe damage to the former medical campus in 2008. Refineries in the Houston and Beaumont Port Arthur areas, both nerve centers for the nation's energy industry, shut down operations in preparation for the storm, sending jitters through global energy markets. To be called a major storm, a hurricane must be Category 3 or higher on the Saffir-Simpson scale, which means winds of 111 to 129 miles an hour. Those winds can bring devastating damage, stripping off roof decking and bringing down many trees. Ike was a Category 2, though it pushed a monster storm surge. Sandy, despite the devastation it caused, had become what is known as a post-tropical storm before it made landfall. Forecasters emphasized that it was not just the wind that made Harvey dangerous. Storm surge, the water that a hurricane pushes ahead of it, can be tremendously destructive. Katrina, one of the deadliest and costliest hurricanes in United States history, inflicted much of its harm in 2005 in New Orleans through the surge, which overwhelmed the city's faulty levees. The sense of anxiety and confusion that preceded landfall was exacerbated Friday by mixed messages from state and local officials. The conflicting views from the Republican governor and the Democratic mayor of Houston reflected the tension that has come to define much of Texas politics. At an afternoon news conference, Governor Abbott strongly urged Houstonians to consider evacuating. "I think it would be a good idea to take a few days off, get out of the Houston area," he said. Soon after the governor's message, Houston's mayor, Sylvester Turner, who for days had been telling residents to shelter in place, advised in a Twitter post, "Please think twice before trying to leave Houston en masse. No evacuation orders have been issued for the city." But while forecasters were warning of epic rains in Houston, some in the city were approaching the storm with aplomb. "We've never evacuated," said Rita Kehoe Welsh, 97 years old, who sat calmly Friday at the Bel Air coffee shop working on a crossword puzzle. Asked how she was preparing for the storm, she laughed and said, "I'm not." In Port Aransas, on a barrier island in the Gulf of Mexico, the authorities issued mandatory evacuation orders, fearing that life-threatening flooding and winds would batter the town. Frank Eichholz, 55, and his wife were among those who evacuated their home there. Mr. Eichholz, a local fishing guide, grew up on the coast and remembers Hurricane Celia in 1970, which struck Corpus Christi when he was 8. "I can remember there wasn't a single fence standing after Celia," he said. "It ripped part of our roof off our house. For an 8-year-old kid, that's kind of scary." When a Specs liquor store opened in Houston on Friday morning, it did not have to wait long for customers. About 125 of them had lined up outside in the rain. By early afternoon, the store's manager, Ryan Holder, estimated that about 3,000 people had passed through, filling the parking lot and then their cars with wine and not a few kegs of beer. But as double the usual number of customers came through the door, water was crucial. "Water, ice, beer," Mr. Holder said. "We have a ton of water. We went through 31 pallets of them yesterday. We've gone through 20 so far today. We've got 40 more on the way. We ain't running out." So some people are staying there in the Houston area, armed with water, ice, and apparently beer. So we pray for the safety of our people there. It's going to be quite a situation for the next few days, even into, of course, Saturday, today, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and even Wednesday. It is still going to be in the area. I read another report where in some areas there the first day of school was supposed to be on Monday, but they've canceled that because the hurricane will still be around then and still affecting people there, and the torrential rains will still be continuing as a result of the hurricane. We don't have any specific news yet of damage to human life, which is good. We did have that one report of 2 people being trapped in a building, but we pray for everyone's safety. All right, let's take a break now. We'll be back with more news after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for August 26, Saturday, 2017, the 8th year of Chungi, the 7th month, and the 5th day of that month. So Trump finally did pardon ex-Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who was kind of the face of the crackdown on illegal immigration, and was jailed or was convicted. Was convicted of violating a judge's order to stop detaining illegal immigrants. Let's go through the Breitbart. I was looking at two articles, one on Breitbart and one on Reuters. Let's go through the Breitbart article. Donald Trump pardons Sheriff Joe Arpaio. President Donald Trump pardoned Sheriff Joe Arpaio on Friday evening, citing his record of service to his country. Arpaio's life and career, which began at the age of 18 when he enlisted in the military after the outbreak of the Korean War, exemplifies selfless public service, read a statement from the White House. The Arizona sheriff, now 85 years old, is considered a hero among supporters of immigration enforcement. Arpaio served in the Army before becoming a police officer in Washington, D.C. and Las Vegas, and a special agent in the DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Agency. He became the sheriff of Maricopa County, Arizona in 1992. After more than 50 years of admirable service to our nation, he is a worthy candidate for a presidential pardon, the statement concluded. Arpaio was convicted in July 2017 for violating a federal judge's order to not detain suspected illegal immigrants. He faced up to 6 months in jail for the conviction and possible fines. Arpaio endorsed Donald Trump for president in January 2016 as he was campaigning against primary challengers in Iowa. I have fought on the front lines to prevent illegal immigration, Arpaio said when he endorsed Trump. I know Donald Trump will stand with me and countless Americans to secure our border. So that was the Breitbart article. Let's look at the Reuters article for just a minute here. Donald Trump, a political ally of Joe Arpaio, less than a month after he was convicted of a criminal contempt in a case involving racial profiling. Throughout, so we have the White House statement. Arpaio, 85, the self-proclaimed toughest sheriff in America, lost a bid for re-election in Arizona's Maricopa County in November after 24 years in office. He is known for his crackdown on undocumented immigrants and investigating unfounded Trump supported claims questioning former President Barack Obama's citizenship. I don't know if they were so unfounded. Yeah, I think we've come up with more and more evidence that Barack Obama's birth certificate has major problems with it. I have to thank the president for what he has done, that's for sure, Arpaio told Reuters in a brief telephone interview from his Arizona home. He's a big supporter of law enforcement. Arpaio said his lawyer was sent a copy of the pardon on Friday afternoon, and he planned a press conference to discuss what he said were new details in the case. He declined to say if he would run again for sheriff. I'm not going away, added Arpaio. Arpaio told Reuters that he would reveal more about the case on Monday or Tuesday and detail the real story behind the case that brought him to trial. He has long maintained that the prosecution by the administration under Barack Obama was political, aimed at helping oust him from office. He said his attorney delivered the good news the same day as his wife's birthday, adding, "He came over to give my wife a birthday gift, and it was a pretty good one," said Arpaio, alluding to the pardon as he was about to leave for her celebration dinner. Civil rights advocates slammed Trump's decision as an endorsement of racist and unlawful immigration policies. Once again, this is a quotation from ACLU, once again, the president has acted in support of illegal, failed immigration enforcement practices that target people of color and that have been struck down by the courts, said American Civil Liberties Union Deputy Legal Director Celia Wang, who sought the court injunction against Arpaio. The pardon sent a, quote, dangerous message that a law enforcement officer who abused his position of power and defied a court order can simply be excused by a president who himself clearly does not respect the law, unquote, Vanita Gupta, president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights and former head of the U.S. Justice Department Civil Rights Division, said in a statement. Alejandra Gomez, co-executive director of Living United for Change. Wow, so they have a bunch of people. Reuters has really brought out all the forces here of people who don't like Arpaio or President Trump. They've also got here Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy, and here. Okay, so finally we get to something good. Arpaio, who campaigned for Trump in 2016, was convicted on July 31 by U.S. District Judge Susan Bolton, who ruled he had willfully violated a 2011 injunction barring his officers from stopping and detaining Latino motorists solely on suspicion that they were in the country illegally. Arpaio admitted to inadvertently disobeying the court order, but said his behavior did not meet a criminal standard. He said the prosecution was a politically motivated attempt by the Obama administration to undermine his re-election bid. Arpaio had been scheduled to be sentenced on October 5th and faced a fine and maximum sentence of 6 months in jail. His controversial tenure as sheriff brought Arpaio national headlines for massive roundups of suspected illegal immigrants and for the way he ran the Maricopa County Jail. He reinstated chain gangs, made inmates wear uniforms that were pink or old-fashioned black and white stripes, that forbade them coffee, salt, and pepper. Whoa, no, not pepper. Yes, critics said as Sheriff Arpaio spent too much time courting publicity and not enough on basic policing. Okay, anyway, so Reuters does not like Arpaio, we find out. But it does add information that he's going to have a press conference, it looks like on Monday or Tuesday. He's going to tell us more about the case against him. Excuse me here, just a minute. Okay, safe. I was about to sneeze, but did not. And so we'll be following this story Monday and Tuesday and see what else he has to say. But, you know, we like Arpaio. We like Arpaio. And we like the idea that local sheriffs can have a great deal of power. Here in Pennsylvania, sheriffs don't have a lot of power, actually. They basically work for the court, and they deliver court papers. They serve warrants in some cases and stuff like that. I think our sheriff here Wayne, at least in Wayne County, has about a dozen or so deputies. So it's not a large office and not a lot of power, not a lot of authority here. It's actually the policing is done by the state police. But Sheriff Aparicio had a great deal of authority there in Maricopa County, Arizona. I guess their system in Arizona is different from here in Pennsylvania. And it's good for local sheriffs who are elected by the people of that county to have a great deal of authority and to be able to act in accordance with the majority will of the people in that county. So it would be a good idea if more areas of the United States gave their sheriffs the kind of authority that Aparicio enjoyed. I've not seen this case or the evidence for and against him, so I cannot judge as to the merits of his case. But he says that the prosecution was politically motivated by Barack Obama, and that certainly makes sense because we know that he was doing things that Obama administration did not like. He was enforcing the law against people coming into the country illegally. And of course, Obama was very much against that law. He didn't like that law. And so I can see how a prosecution would be politically motivated against Aparicio. 85 years old, maybe he's not going to be running for sheriff. I don't know. Maybe he's going to enjoy his retirement. But we need more good people like this standing up for America and standing up for American sovereignty. And it's a good thing that President Trump pardoned him. It will encourage those people, other people, to stand up. Well, we, of course, this is Saturday, so we have more missiles being fired from North Korea. Let's take a look at that. There's it's what's called a military exercise going on in South Korea right now, a joint military exercise. But this military exercise involves mostly people in a room sitting around computers. It's not actually, soldiers running around with guns. It's people sitting at computers doing war games. But North Korea doesn't like it. And so they're doing a little more than just sitting at their computers. They're actually shooting missiles. This is a Reuters article out of Seoul in Washington. North Korea fired several short-range missiles into the sea off its east coast early on Saturday, South Korea and the U.S. Military said, as the two allies conducted annual joint military drills that the North denounces as preparations for war. Yeah, it's preparations for war. It's preparations for a defensive war against North Korea. In judging, in preparation for the possibility that North Korea could start something. The U.S. military's Pacific Command said it had detected 3 short-range ballistic missiles fired over a 20-minute period. One appeared to have blown up almost immediately, while 2 flew about 250 kilometers, or 155 miles, in a northeasterly direction. Pacific Command said, revising an earlier assessment that 2 of the missiles had failed in flight. The test came just days after senior U.S. officials praised North Korea and leader Kim Jong-un for showing restraint in not firing any missiles since late July. Yeah, Tillerson said that, and, I think Rex Tillerson still has to learn something. Positive reinforcement doesn't work on North Korea, right? Oh, yeah, nice boy, you haven't fired any missiles in the last 3 days. It doesn't work like that with North Korea, all right? They're going to... If you have military drills in South Korea, you're going to have missiles flying out of North Korea. That's just a given. Tillerson, he still has some things to work to learn. The test came just days after, since late July. South Korean office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said the projectiles were launched from the northeastern Gangwon province into the sea. Later on Saturday, the South Korean Presidential Blue House said the North may have fired an upgraded 300-millimeter caliber multiple rocket launcher, but the military was still analyzing the precise details of the projectiles. And South Korea is trying to play down the situation. No, it wasn't missiles. It was a 300-millimeter caliber multiple rocket launcher. that traveled 250 kilometers. Anyway, South Korea wants to give North Korea the benefit of the doubt because they now have a president who is essentially communist. Moon Jae-in is essentially communist. He is communist. He was part of the Roh Moo-hyun administration, which was definitely communist. Pacific Command said the missiles did not pose a threat to the U.S. mainland or to the Pacific territory of Guam, which North Korea had threatened earlier this month to surround in a, quote, sea of fire, unquote. Tensions had eased somewhat since a harsh exchange of words between Pyongyang and Washington after U.S. President Donald Trump had warned Korean leader Kim Jong-un he would face, quote, fire and fury, unquote, if he threatened the United States. You know, I think President Trump did a good thing with that. You know, some people say, oh, the Democrats say, oh, no, is escalating the tensions, escalating the rhetoric. But, yeah, I think it was, which would you rather have, the president firing actual missiles or verbal missiles? I think verbal missiles are much preferred, and they did the job in this case, all right? Much better than Rex Tillerson's positive reinforcement, for crying out loud. Tensions had eased somewhat since the harsh exchange with fire and fury. North Korea's last missile test on July 28th was for an intercontinental ballistic missile designed to fly 10,000 kilometers or 6,200 miles. That would put parts of the U.S. mainland within reach and prompted heated exchange that raised fears of a new conflict on the peninsula. Yeah, I keep saying that the idea here is you got to raise fears in Beijing. You got to make China afraid, really afraid, truly afraid. You got to make China believe that the United States is going to attack North Korea, because it is only then that China will attack or will deal with North Korea first, before the U.S. has a chance to. And that's what we want. We want China to deal with this. But to get the Chinese to move on this, you're going to have to make them afraid. You have to convince them that the United States, if you convince them that the United States will attack tomorrow, they will attack today. And they will go in there and they will remove the nuclear threat, and they will remove the U.S. Reason for wanting to attack North Korea. And that's what has to happen here. If the U.S. does it, it's going to be a huge, huge, huge mess with tremendous casualties. If China does it, far fewer casualties. And I think that is probably if you want to preserve human life, if you want to preserve some semblance of peace, that's the way it has to be done. Anyway, let's take a break now, and we'll be back in a few, or in a minute, I guess, or so, with more news from a Choniku perspective. See you in a minute.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for August 26th, Saturday. And let's look at this article about YouTube. policing or Google policing YouTube. You know, the second king was able to come here and to this area in northeast Pennsylvania, which is a relatively sparsely populated area, and reach out to members throughout the world, primarily because he had access to the internet. And internet is really something that democratizes the flow of information. It makes information available to everyone. And right now, the Sunday service is viewed by around 200 locations around the world, live every week. In addition to the people who are here, we don't know how many people are at each location that are viewing. I know some congregations actually, especially in the same time zone, incorporate the live broadcast of the Sunday service into their own Sunday service. Other places, people watch it on their cell phones by themselves, or families watch it in front of a computer. So we don't know how many people are actually watching the live broadcast, but it's being watched in about 200 locations from week to week. And YouTube makes that possible. And so this article is a bit of a concern from that point of view, that Google is going to start, or has started, policing YouTube. It says, quote, like it never has before. Google began to police YouTube like it never has before Thursday, cracking down further on, quote, offensive content, unquote, according to a report. And of course, it's that word offensive that has taken on many meanings recently. It used to be that we could understand what it was meant by offensive, but not anymore. Quote, Google will police YouTube like it never has before, adding warnings and disabling advertising on videos that the company determines crosses its new threshold for offensive content, reported Bloomberg Technology on Thursday. So we're not so concerned about advertising. But let's go on. Google outlined these moves in June, but the implementation comes as debate about extremism and political speech is front and center in the national spotlight. And when tech giants like Google and Facebook Inc. face deeper scrutiny over how they moderate information distributed through their digital services. Offending videos will not be removed, potentially allowing Google to still make money from them, but cutting off monetization for the creators, who will also face other restrictions. Quote, YouTube isn't removing these selected videos, but instead setting new restrictions on viewing, sharing, and making money on them, unquote. Google first announced the crackdown in June, where they masked censorship tools under the guise of anti-terrorism measures. In a blog post, the company announced the introduction of more advanced tools as well as a higher number of human moderators to identify problematic videos. And who do you think they're hiring as the human moderators? How many conservatives do you think are among those human moderators that are being hired by Google? I think the number is probably somewhere between 0 and 0. Quote, we will be taking a tougher stance on videos that do not clearly violate our policies. Tougher stance on videos that do not clearly violate our policies. For example, videos that contain inflammatory, religious, or supremacist content, Google explained. Inflammatory religious content. We feel the walls closing in on us. Quote, in future, these will appear behind an interstitial warning, and they will not be monetized, recommended, or eligible for comments or user endorsements. That means these videos will have less engagement and be harder to find, they continued. We think this strikes the right balance between free expression and access to information without promoting extremely offensive viewpoints. So, again, extremely offensive. The king and our community has certain views on Islam, homosexuality, transgenderism, immigration, European Union, Antifa. the walls are closing in. Several large and prominent YouTube creators have revealed they no longer make money or on videos after a wave of demonetization crackdowns by the company. The list includes popular conservative commentators such as Diamond and Silk, and PragerU. But also, PragerU is a very good channel, by the way, but also includes some of the platform's biggest creators, ranging from comedy and politics to sex education and gaming. The popular technique by YouTube is to, quote, age restrict, unquote, videos which aren't suitable for advertisers, resulting in the creator's inability to make money from advertisements. And here, one tweet that says, "Phew, good thing my condom demonstration is age restricted. Wouldn't want those under 18 preventing pregnancy and infections. Am I right?" Okay, we don't mind they're restricting condom demonstrations. That's okay. Earlier this month, YouTube also declared that because the way to prevent pregnancy and infections is to abstain before marriage, that's the way to prevent that, not condoms. Earlier this month, YouTube also declared that if enough users flag a video as hate speech or violent extremism, YouTube may impose restrictions on the content even if it breaks none of the platform's rules, according to a report. The company also announced a partnership that the left-winged biased Anti-Defamation League, who previously blamed Trump supporters for the rise of anti-Semitism, added a popular cartoon frog meme to their hate symbol database and attempted to slander Breitbart News executive chairman Stephen K. Bannon. So that story from Breitbart. So yeah, as the judgment gets worse, we move from mid-trib onward towards the end of judgment. Of course, we're expecting things to get worse, and it may come to pass that content from Sanctuary Church will not be easily found, or maybe not even found at all on YouTube. So if that happens, please remember that our website is sanctuary-pa.org, and we will make our content available directly through that website. Or through the Facebook page, Newfoundland Sanctuary, or was it Sanctuary Church Newfoundland PA is our Facebook page, Sanctuary Church Newfoundland PA. Okay, so be ready that if Google knocks us out, as they could, as in the next 2 or 3 years, please be aware of that so that we can get through this judgment together. Just to remember that it is, though, going to end. They cannot stop us forever. So let's move on. And another important person that we had hopes for in the White House has resigned. Sebastian Gorka resigns from Trump administration. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who served as deputy assistant to President Donald Trump since January, resigned from the White House administration on Friday evening. That's last night. Given recent events, it is clear to me that forces that do not support the MAGA promise, MAGA, Make America Great Again, MAGA, MAGA promise, are for now ascendant within the White House, Gorka wrote in a letter addressed to the President. As a result, the best and most effective way I can support you, Mr. President, is from outside the People's House. Sources within the administration close to Dr. Gorka claimed he became disillusioned because Trump's key policy platform of fighting radical Islamic terrorism was repeatedly undermined when his National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, fired key individuals from the National Security Council who were loyal to that platform. A source close to Dr. Gorka claimed that he made his decision following the president's speech in which he indicated he would escalate America's war in Afghanistan. The anti-MAGAs have control of Trump's foreign policy, the source said. In his resignation letter, he also expressed disappointment with the administration's new foreign policy direction, particularly in light of Donald Trump's most recent speech in which he announced his decision to send more troops to Afghanistan. Gorka wrote, quote, "Regrettably, outside of yourself, the individuals who most embodied and represented the policies that will make America great again have been internally countered, systematically removed, or undermined in recent months. This was made patently obvious as I read the text of your speech on Afghanistan this week, The fact that those who drafted and approved the speech removed any mention of radical Islam or radical Islamic terrorism proves that a crucial element of your presidential campaign has been lost. Of course, earlier, Steve Bannon, when he quit the White House, has said that the kind of presidency that Trump campaigned for is over. We seem to be in a new chapter, definitely in a new chapter of Donald Trump's presidency. Gorka had also become deeply frustrated with the unprecedented levels of personal abuse propagated against him by the mainstream media, which included attacks against Gorka's children, as well as the numerous bureaucratic obstacles used to slow down his work on national security issues, including delaying Gorka's final permanent national security clearance. During his time in the administration, Gorka focused on key issues such as tackling radical Islamic terrorism, the diplomatic crisis in Qatar, and managing relations with China. He also earned a reputation as a formidable media persona, repeatedly ripping mainstream media networks such as CNN for their propagation of fake news narratives. Breitbart is currently in negotiations with Dr. Gorka regarding his support for the website, as well as collaboration on a joint venture that would embody a Jacksonian national security vision. Okay, we'll have to see what that's about. Jacksonian national security vision. Well, I guess we'll be finding out about that more in the coming days or weeks. A California Catholic school is under fire for removing and relocating alienating religious statues, but I think this is a little bit different. I'm not so sure that this is a bad thing. A California Catholic school is facing a backlash from parents after officials took down some religious statues, including one of Mary and baby Jesus, over concerns that they were alienating prospective students. The head of the San Domenico School and San Anselmo said parents of some prospective students who visited the campus, which was founded in 1850 and serves 671 students, grades at K-12, expressed concern about the religious figures, according to the Marin Independent Journal. If you walk on the campus and the first thing you confront is 3 or 4 statues of St. Dominic or St. Francis, it could be alienating for that other religion. And we don't want to further that feeling, Amy Skews Cox, who chairs the school's Board of Trustees. Not sure which religion she's referring to for that other religion. Jews, Protestants, Muslims, I don't know. Anyway, if you Cicely Stock, who is head of the school, said most students are not Catholic. You see, that's the point here. Most of the students are not Catholic. Over the past few years, we've had fewer Catholic students as part of the community and a larger number of students of various faith traditions. Stock said, right now about 80% of our families do not identify as Catholic. An official who described the institution as California's oldest independent school and first Catholic school told Fox News a large number of religious statues were recently relocated to other parts of the school's campus, and some were donated to appreciative recipients. Our goal in this shift was in alignment with our strategic plan that was approved by our Board of Trustees and Dominican Sisters of San Rafael in June of 2016 and reflects our commitment to continuing a 167-year-old tradition of inclusive education, Kimberly Pinkston, Director of Marketing and Communications, told Fox News. So if a school is around for 167 years, it has to keep changing according to the market. And as a private institution, I think they have the right to do this. This is completely different from what has happened in Charlottesville and Durham, North Carolina, and other places where people for forces from outside the community are going in many cases and trying to tear down Confederate statues. Fox News, I guess, reported this kind of because it has a connection with that, or that's kind of the news hook that they're looking for. But this is a private institution, and they look at market forces and they say, you know what, in order to continue our school, because they have to, they have to listen to the market and do what the market says in order to, if their objective is to continue the school. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, whether this is a school that should continue or not, that I don't know. Depends on what they're teaching, and if they're. But I think the idea of an independent school, of a school that's not part of the state education system, that in itself is a good thing. We need a lot of independent schools, private schools, so that parents can have choice and not have to send their children to the state run education systems. So I think this is not something that we can criticize them for. Private institution doing what they think is good for their school to be able to continue responding to market forces around them. So we wish them luck. We hope that they are able to continue, and we'll see what happens there. We'll come back in a minute or so with more news from a Chunibuk perspective. Welcome back to the King's Report for August 26th, 2017, on this pleasant Saturday here in northeastern Pennsylvania. And the temperature, I believe, now is around 50 degrees, or maybe we're still in the upper 40s, around 50 degrees, as we're looking forward to a pleasant day with highs at 75. But in Texas, it's another story along the Texas coast. Let's take another look at the nearest, most recent update on Hurricane Harvey from weather.com. Harvey made a landfall near Rockport, Texas, with winds of 130 miles an hour at 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. That would be 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Harvey is now a Category 2 hurricane with 110 mile an hour winds. Harvey will soon stall or meander for several days, leading to a threat of catastrophic flooding in parts of Texas. A dangerous storm surge flooding, damaging winds, and a couple of tornadoes are also threats. Hurricane, tropical storm, and storm surge warnings have been issued for parts of Texas. Those are the highlights. Let's go into the story. Hurricane Harvey made landfall Friday night near Rockport, Texas, a town of less than 10,000 people, and about 30 miles up the Texas coast from Corpus Christi, after rapidly intensifying in the Gulf of Mexico. The eye wall, the location of the strongest winds, continues to push inland with dangerous wind gusts. Harvey is the nation's first major, that is Category 3 or stronger, hurricane landfall in almost 12 years. A multi-day deluge of the Texas Gulf Coast with catastrophic and life-threatening flooding and destructive winds could leave areas uninhabitable for an extended period of time, the National Weather Service has warned. Let's get down here. Harvey went from a tropical depression to a major hurricane in 56 hours. It intensified rapidly to a Category 4 hurricane with winds up to 130 miles an hour after moving over a pocket of hot water in the Gulf. Harvey has pushed water 2 to 7 feet above average tide levels near Corpus Christi to Lavaca Bay, and levels are continuing to rise with the onset of high tide. Harvey is located about 30 miles southwest of Victoria, Texas, moving northwest at around 6 miles an hour. This was at 5 a.m. Our time, about 1 hour ago. Let's see, winds were 100 miles an hour, about at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. Hurricane-force winds continue to blast a small part of Texas Coast Bend. Hurricane-force winds extend outward up to 35 miles from the center, and tropical storm-force winds extend outward up to 140 miles, according to the National Hurricane Center. A Texas Ocean Observatory Network station at Aransas Pass reported sustained winds of 102 miles an hour and wind gusts of 132 miles on Friday night. Rainfall amounts of nearly 10 inches have already accumulated in southeast Texas, including 9.37 inches just south of Victoria. The current hurricane warnings have been issued for a portion of the Texas coast. So nothing about damage yet, but I suspect that's partly or perhaps primarily because people are not able to get out. First responders are not able to get out to assess the situation. We pray for people who are trapped or who are in trouble there. So far, no damage reports. Structural damage to buildings near the coast is expected, with many washing away, it says here, National Weather Service. Rising water will cut off near-shore escape routes and secondary routes before peak surge arrives. Okay. All right, let's continue to follow that. Now let's look at the other news. Fate of transgender already in military unclear under order. As President Trump has given his official order to stop for the military, stop allowing transgender people to into the military. Washington AP, President Trump on Friday directed the Pentagon to extend indefinitely a ban on transgender individuals joining the military, but the president appeared to leave open the possibility of allowing some already in uniform to remain. Trump gave Defense Secretary Jim Mattis authority to decide the matter of openly transgender individuals already serving, and he said that until the Pentagon chief makes that decision, no action may be taken against them. The Obama administration in June 2016 had changed longstanding policy, declaring that troops could serve openly as transgender individuals. And it set a July 2017 deadline for determining whether transgender people could be allowed to enter the military. Mattis delayed that to January 1, 2018, and Trump has now instructed Mattis to extend it indefinitely. Let me take a cough break here. Can't seem to... The cough button doesn't really work very well. But on the question of what will happen to those transgender individuals who already are serving openly, estimated to number in the low hundreds, Trump seemed to leave wiggle room for exceptions. A White House official who briefed reporters on the presidential order would not say whether Trump would permit any exceptions. That official, who spoke on condition of anonymity under ground rules set by the White House, said Mattis has been directed to take a number of factors into consideration in determining how to deal with transgender individuals already serving. Those factors are to include broad measures such as military effectiveness, budgetary constraints, and unit cohesion. But I think the important thing here has been left out. That is that the military can no longer spend on surgery for transgender individuals. And that's the kind of important thing, because military didn't have enough money to provide armor even to people in Afghanistan, to everyone in Afghanistan, and that situation needs to be corrected, and I think this is part of that situation here. I think in another report that was included, that information was included. All right. Hollywood is having a hard time. Why would that be? Weekend box office. Movie-going slows to a standstill amid historic August slump. I guess the American people are turning against Hollywood, would you think? Hurricane Harvey will impact theaters in Texas, while Saturday night's Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight is expected to be a big draw on pay-per-view. Is that fight tonight? I guess it is. Mother Nature certainly isn't helping the dramatic downturn at the August box office, where revenue is running more than 70% behind August 2016. Whoa, something is changing. Yeah. Box office revenue down 70% in August compared to the same month last year. Hurricane Harvey, which is if it isn't Trump, it got to be Harvey. Trump, Harvey, Trump, Harvey. Hurricane Harvey, which is bearing down on the Gulf Coast, is already prompting theater closures in Corpus Christi and other coastal locales, while many movie houses in Houston began closing Friday evening. Even without this storm, none of the weekend's new offerings were expected to earn more than $5 million, and that's proving to be the case based on early Friday returns. Animated film family Leap from Harvey Weinstein's shop is projected to gross anywhere from 4.4 to 4.8 million from 2,575 theaters for a third-place finish behind holdovers The Hitman's Bodyguard, $8 million, and Annabelle Creation, $6.5 million, respectively. Hitman's Bodyguard will join only a short list of films to ever win a weekend with less than $10 million, at least in modern times. Leap tells the story of an 11-year-old orphan voiced by Elle Fanning, who dreams of becoming a ballet dancer She teams up with a young inventor named Victor, and together they pursue their passions in 19th century Paris, where the Eiffel Tower is still under construction. Along the way, they encounter such characters as such as a devious classmate and a tough but encouraging mentor. It's possible that the Weinstein Company's specialty film, the Robert Pattinson crime drama Wind River, could outpace Leap, as Wind River expands into a total of 2,095 locations after a successful limited run. Birth of a Dragon from Blumhouse's micro-budget genre label BH Tilt looks to open in the $2.5 million range from 1,600 theaters. The film, directed by George Nolfi, is a fictional account of when Bruce Lee challenged Kung Fu master Wong Jack Man to a fight in the mid-1960s in San Francisco. Birth of the Dragon stars Hong Kong-born actor and martial artist Philip Ng, Xiao Yu, Billy Magnuson, Chu Jin Xing, and Simon Yin. Box office experts say an even bigger threat to moviegoing than Hurricane Harvey is Saturday's Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight, which is being carried on pay-per-view. It will also be beamed into roughly 500 theaters via Fathom and Mayweather Productions. Another special offering this weekend is James Cameron's 4K 4000 3D conversion of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which AMC Entertainment is releasing in selected locations. The weekend's third new nationwide offering is Stephen Gomer's faith-based film All Saints from Sony's Affirm label. The $2 million film is based on the real-life story of Michael Spurlock, a salesman-turned-pastor who, along with a group of refugees from Southeast Asia, risks everything to save his tiny church. John Colbert, Carabono, Miles Moore, Nelson Lee, Barry Corbin, David Keith, Angela Fox, Chanda Pierce, and Greg Allen Williams star. Well, that sounds like a pretty interesting thing. Let me look that up. All Saints. Here, in showing in this area as well. Cinemark, AMC, Allentown, or Cinemark, Michael Spurlock decides to trade in his corporate sales career to become a pastor. Unfortunately, his first assignment is to close a country church and sell the prime piece of land where it sits. He soon has a change of heart when the church starts to welcome refugees from Burma. Spurlock now finds himself working with the refugees to turn the land into a working farm to pay the church's bills. That actually sounds interesting. Anyway, overall, Hollywood is having a tough time, and we are not shedding tears for them. But that one called All Saints looks interesting. You can check the movie times in your local area. Navy navigation errors may have killed more troops than Afghanistan so far in 2017. Yeah, these things, they keep going bump in the night, while they're moving around the ocean. We had one off the coast of Japan, one off east of Singapore, and earlier in the year we had a Navy vessel run into a South Korean fishing boat, and we had one run aground. Stay away from the ground. Really, the discipline in the Navy is a concern here, because especially the Pacific Fleet, we're depending on the Pacific Fleet to be able to present a credible deterrent against North Korea. But if you keep bumping into oil tankers and bumping into the ground, how are you going to do that? A heartsick surface Navy is vowing to find answers after a series of incidents that could make the peacetime Western Pacific deadlier for U.S. troops this year than Afghanistan. The Navy began, as it often does, with accountability. On Wednesday, it fired the three-star general whose command in the Western Pacific suffered at least 4 big accidents this year, 2 of which have killed a combined 17 sailors. An officer aboard the destroyer USS Stethem also was lost overboard near the Philippines on August 1. That compares with 11 service members killed in Afghanistan. Details are available from the Military Times and iCasualties.org. President Trump on Monday authorized a big new deployment of American forces in Afghanistan, according to senior U.S. officials. Vice Admiral Joseph Aucoin, head of 7th Fleet, was relieved due to loss of confidence in his ability to command, the service announced. He had been expected to retire soon. Rear Admiral Phil Sawyer, who had already been confirmed as his replacement, will take over immediately. Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral Scott Swift told reporters in Singapore that divers and the Malaysian Navy have discovered some remains of 10 missing crew members after the destroyer USS John S. McCain collided with a merchant tanker on Monday. The Navy has not officially declared the missing 10 lost, but the White House issued an official statement of condolence on Tuesday evening that alluded to the United States sailor fatalities following the collision. It was at least the 3rd such incident this summer, following the collision of the destroyer USS Fitzgerald with a merchant container vessel off Tokyo and the collision of the cruiser USS Lake Champlain with a fishing vessel off Korean Peninsula. They don't talk about the one that ran aground in Tokyo Bay. The Fitzgerald collision killed 7 sailors. I guess no one was killed in that, but still, I mean, you gotta come on, stay away from the land, will you? Drive a car when you're on land, not a ship. The Fitzgerald collision killed 7 sailors. The Lake Champlain was not seriously affected and continued its deployment. The latest deaths on the John S. McCain have devastated the Service Navy families as it continued grieving after the losses aboard the Fitzgerald. We owe it to sailors that man 7th Fleet and their families to answer the questions that flow from the uncertainty of what happened, said Swift, the head of the U.S. 7th Fleet. How could it happen? And what can be done to prevent such in the future? We owe it to each and every one of them to pursue answers to these questions. Well, obviously, because these ships have Aegis systems that can track 100 targets at once, all right? But you can't track an oil tanker that's coming off your starboard and it's going to hit you in the midships. Another one, the McCain, was hit off the port. These are big oil tankers. You've got to be able to drive the thing to avoid those. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral John Richardson ordered an operational pause for ships around the world and a specific review for those posted to the Western Pacific. But the collisions at sea, as well as an incident early this year in which a cruiser USS Antietam ran aground, there we go now, off Tokyo, are only superficially similar. They took place in different waters at different times of day under different conditions. But there's a culture, obviously. It's a culture problem. Look at the culture. Something's wrong with the training of the officers. These aren't situations in which the same type of equipment, a radar, for example, or a propulsion system common to each ship, failed under similar circumstances. Well, the common thing is the culture. The Navy can't simply recall and replace a widget in order to be able to increase safety across the fleet. The main thing that each case has in common was what makes the Navy's task so difficult, the human element. Culture! Navy mishaps often emerge from judgment calls. A commanding officer or CO misjudges which young officers or sailors are ready to stand a crucial watch by themselves, putting people into positions of authority who aren't ready. A captain becomes overconfident to the point of complacency, inured to risks that he should take more seriously. Well, the 2, oil tanker collisions took place in areas of high traffic. That's common. So obviously, I hope the Navy's looking at that fact. Or crew members reach a point where they feel they can't question the orders they're getting or ask for help and instead resign themselves to go along. There was a fog on the bridge, a sort of zero-defect mentality that conveyed don't say anything or the CO would get upset, as one officer on the Antietam later told investigators. The CEO liked to get underway on time, and things would get inflated in the moment. The military newspaper Stars and Stripes described the investigation into the Antietam's grounding after obtaining it under the Freedom of Information Act. It depicted an angry captain, unqualified watch standards, and poor preparation. The commanding officer was fired, and other crew members were reprimanded. But a military unit needs military discipline. It's difficult to strike a balance between a constructive culture and a dysfunctional one in a ship where men and women must work for months in close quarters while covering huge stretches of the empty Pacific. It's not the huge stretches of the empty Pacific that's the problem. It's the high traffic areas where, you've got oil tankers and other things running crisscross and everything. That's where we're having the problem, right? It's not the huge open the ocean. I mean, a huge open ocean, you can make a navigational error for a little bit and not hit anything. All the same, Swift said the Navy will implement a deliberate reset for the units based in Japan that will focus on navigation, machinery, and bridge resource management. In other words, training crew members on watch how to use their eyes and ears, both human and electronic, to help drive their ships. And stay out of people's way, all right, especially the oil tankers. Keep hitting these oil tankers. This is not the Navy's first broad look at the practices of the surface forces. In 2009, having been stung by a series of embarrassing reports that revealed some of its warships were rusting, broken, or otherwise unready, the Navy commissioned retired Vice Admiral Philip Balisle to head a fleet review panel and study the problem. Balisle's report, issued the next year, not only confirmed that systems aboard the Navy's high-tech warships were breaking down more often and the ships themselves were in less than ideal shape, but also warned about problems with crew's shipboard culture. See? Yeah. Acceptance of problems, too little training, and too much work. One problem was years of Navy penny pinching. Obama! In which ships sailed with smaller crews, creating more work for the sailors who remained, which meant less time for hands-on training and more rust, broken equipment, and other such problems. It appears the effort to derive efficiencies has overtaken our culture of effectiveness, the report said. Navy leaders said they were taking those insights to heart, adding sailors back to crews and renewing their focus on training and competence. Good idea. Richardson's task is to determine whether that hasn't been enough or whether it hasn't actually been filtering all the way down to the fleet and what else he might not know about the workings of today's fleet. Admiral Philip Davidson, head of the Navy's Fleet Forces Command, will lead the effort that Richardson has set into motion. He is a Naval Academy graduate and career service warfare officer who's commanded a frigate, a cruiser, and an aircraft carrier strike group, in addition to his other assignments. Richardson said in a video statement that the Navy would look at everything it needs to across the board in order to get a sense of how to be of the best help to crews. And meanwhile, McCain, whose father and grandfather were namesake of the destroyer, said the Navy must get this right. Quote, our sailors who risk their lives every day in combat and in training deserve no less. I expect full transparency and accountability from the Navy leaders as they conduct the associated investigations and reviews, John McCain said. We're supposed to have the best Navy in the world, so it's very, very frustrating when they start, running into the ground, running into other ships, when they're supposed to be able to track all these, 100 or so targets and be able to, destroy countries like North Korea in 15 minutes, but they can't even drive straight. All right, well, let's take a break, come back with some other news from a Chonika perspective.
Car Arms. Magnum Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 26th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. Elon Musk. Guy's doing some dangerous stuff. Elon Musk's Neuralink gets $27 million to build brain computers. Neuralink Corp, the startup co-founded by billionaire Elon Musk, has taken steps to sell as much as $100 million in stock to fund the development of technology that connects human brains with computers. Here we go. This is what the king has been warning us about. Oh boy. The San Francisco-based company has already gotten $27 million in funding, according to a filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Musk said via Twitter on Friday that Neuralink isn't seeking outside investors. A spokesman didn't respond to questions about the source of the funds. That's not good. Musk, 46, is the chief executive officer of Tesla Inc. and Space Exploration Technology Corp., and has several other pet projects, including a venture to bore tunnels for roads or tube-based transportation systems known as Hyperloop, and another project for the responsible development of artificial intelligence. Well, Hyperloop one I'm kind of interested in because, we have this international highway that Father declared, and we need to complete. In June, Musk said Neuralink is a priority after much more demanding commitments to his automotive and rocket companies. Boring Company, that's what it's called, Boring Company, is maybe 2% of my time. Neuralink is 3% to 5% of my time. OpenAI is going to be a couple of percent, and then 90% is divided between SpaceX and Tesla, said Musk at the electric car maker's annual shareholder meeting. Few details are known about Neuralink. The company's separate website says it's developing ultra-high bandwidth brain-machine interfaces to connect humans and computers. It's also recruiting engineers and scientists to join the effort. No neuroscience experience is required. Talent and drive matter far more. The company said on the site, "We expect most of our team to come from other areas and industries." All right, that's all they have on that. Connecting human brains to computers. We have no idea what's going to happen with that. That's the danger. We don't know. It's going into areas that is beyond God's creation, and this is so in the Cheongguk Constitution, of course. If you start messing with your genes, you're not going to be considered human. Not going to be have human rights under the Constitution. Springtime for the Confederacy. At Dolly Parton's Civil War-themed dinner theater, audiences root for the North or the South. I saw it twice because you got to see both sides. The same week that a statue of Robert E. Lee led to the death of an innocent woman in Charlottesville, Virginia, I watched him oink and squeal. In a race for the fate of the country. Lee, this time, was a piglet, part of Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede, a medieval times-styled dine-in attraction where 7 nights a week and at occasional weekend matinees, the South rises again. Advertised as an extraordinary dinner show pitting North against South in a friendly and fun rivalry, Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede is the lost cause of the Confederacy meets Cirque du Soleil. It's a lily-white kitsch extravaganza that play-acts the Civil War, but never once mentions slavery. Instead, it romanticizes the Old South with generous portions of both corn on the cob and Southern belles festooned in Christmas lights. At its sister staging in Branson, Missouri, it's put on a venue that can only be described as resembling a plantation mansion. Also, everyone in the audience must pick a side. So when the debate over Confederate monuments reignited earlier this month, I knew I had to see for myself whether this thing was really as tasteless as it seemed. The Dixie Stampede has been running for nearly 30 years, but some informal straw polling suggests that many casual Dolly fans, including black fans like me, have never heard of it. They might also be surprised to learn that the Union versus Confederacy was just the Lakers versus Celtics of its time. Because I had seen the promo video on the show's webpage, I thought I knew what to expect. It all seems innocent enough until you begin to see relics of the war between the states. Waiters dressed in Union uniforms dropping food on the plates of happy patrons hungry for nostalgia, and smiling men on horseback wearing Confederate uniforms. As one colleague pointed out with a mix of horror and delight, recalling the deliberately offensive fictional musical from the producers, it's springtime for Hitler. Update August 24, the Disney Stampede's the Dixie Stampede's YouTube page has removed the promo, but here is an audience-captured video from 2015. I see. First, though, I'd have to order my ticket, and any visitor to the Dixie Stampede is greeted first with a choice. Do you want to sit with the North or the South? As the granddaughter of a couple who left openly hostile racism in Mississippi and headed north more than 60 years ago, vowing never to live in the heart of Dixie again, my first instinct was naturally to sit with the North. On the seating chart, it was helpfully colored blue, the hue used by the Union Army, while the South is assigned a Confederate gray. But for the sake of journalism and in the tradition of our president, I knew I had to see it on many sides. First, I'd see the 6 p.m. show with the North, and then later that night, the 8:30 p.m. show with the South. Okay, well, so that's an interesting situation with Dolly. It's a Dixie dinner. Much more interesting, I think, is this story. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster issues executive order cutting off state and local money from abortion clinics. South Carolina governor. Triggering praise, criticism, and some confusion, Governor Henry McMaster issued an executive order Friday cutting off all public funding to healthcare providers affiliated with abortion clinics in South Carolina. In the order, he directed the South Carolina Medicaid Agency to seek permission from the federal government to exclude abortion clinics from the state's Medicaid provider network. There are a variety of agencies, clinics, and medical entities in South Carolina that receive taxpayer funding to offer important women's health and family planning services without performing abortions, McMaster said in a press release about the order. Taxpayer dollars must not directly or indirectly subsidize abortion providers like Planned Parenthood, he said. Wow, yay, that's good news. 3 clinics offer elective abortions in South Carolina, but only one of them is a Planned Parenthood clinic in Columbia. Federal law already prohibits Medicaid money from being used to pay for abortions, with exceptions for cases of rape, incest, or when the mother's life is in danger. Life begins at the moment of conception, and we should not be terminating that life. Dr. Reagan McDonnell Mosley, the Chief Medical Officer of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, issued a statement Friday vowing, "This is not over." In South Carolina, she said 4,000 patients receive birth control, cancer screenings, and other preventive care at Planned Parenthood clinics each year, and will leave no stone unturned to protect our patients' access to health care, McDonnell Mosley said. Planned Parenthood did not expressly threaten legal action on Friday, but it's unclear if McMaster's executive order would withstand such a challenge. A law signed by President Donald Trump in April allows states to block abortion clinics from receiving money through federal family planning grants. But in February, a federal judge temporarily stopped an attempt in Texas to defund Planned Parenthood, allowing the group's clinics to continue treating Medicaid patients. The Texas Attorney General recently asked the U.S. U.S. Court of Appeals, to overturn that ruling. The exact language of McMaster's executive order bans government money from, quote, any physician or professional medical practice affiliated with an abortion clinic and operating concurrently with and in the same physical geographic location or footprint as an abortion clinic, unquote. Dr. Scott Sullivan, the director of maternal fetal medicine at the Medical University of South Carolina, wasn't sure Friday if or how the new order might affect the hospital. MUSC physicians will only terminate a pregnancy with a patient's consent when they deem the procedure medically necessary. I asked hospital legal to review the order this morning, Sullivan said, and I'm concerned, obviously. Okay, well, good news there, good news. More lives are being saved in South Carolina. Hollywood having difficulty with people not wanting to watch their movies, and so it looks like they're going to go digital, and artificial intelligence will start making digital humans, and these will be our new stars. Script supervisors, editors, CG artists, and actors will all have better look out. It's all over by 2045. We are no longer running the show. It says here, following Paul Walker's death in 2013, the Furious 7 filmmakers faced the delicate task of finishing the film using a digitally created version of the actor. To do so, they resorted to performance capture with the help of the actors' brothers, Caleb and Cody, as well as painstaking computer animation from a team of VFX house Weta. That was state-of-the-art in 2014, but imagine if instead a computer could have stepped in, watched all of Walker's performances in the previous Furious films, learning the minute details of how he walked, talked, and even raised an eyebrow, and then imagine that artificial intelligence took over and itself helped to create a digital performance for Walker's character. Sean Connery back as 007. Yay! This isn't so far. This isn't so far off. Now that the use of computer graphics is commonplace in movies and TV, artificial intelligence may be the most important technology to emerge in Hollywood. Potential AI-driven applications in which the machine takes over and can learn and think for itself could function as script supervisors, take a first pass at film editing, even create performances either for digital characters that resemble actual humans or more fantastic CG creatures. While that may sound like something out of Blade Runner or Westworld, the truth is such technology could have a huge impact in areas Hollywood cares about a lot, schedules and budgets, by shortening production times and bringing down costs. Would they still make those obnoxious political speeches at the Academy Awards? If they don't, then I'm all for this. Yeah? If we can, these digital actors would just take the word and shut up. That would be great. thank their mother and brother and whatever and just sit down. I would be all for it then. Creating believable digital humans, still considered the most difficult VFX feat, could be the ultimate test of the emerging tech due to the uncanny valley, the phenomenon in which human replicas that are not quite human seeming essentially creep people out. Certainly not the best way to drive people into the theater seats. Digital humans are increasingly important in films, but if your data is too sparse, it doesn't look right, says Chris Nichols, a director at Chaos Group Labs, Chaos, and key member of the Digital Human League, a research and development group. We are using AI to fill in gaps. The whole concept of AI is dependent on data training itself. The more data you have, the better the system works. Such techniques have not been used in a mainstream movie, but theoretically, AI could do the job creating a digital Paul Walker faster and more economically than current methods. Wow, this is interesting. Brave new world. But is this where we're going? Where Hollywood is going AI? If we don't have these, obnoxious Hollywood actors trying to leverage their popularity and entertainment into some kind of political influence, then it could be a good thing. But then maybe the producers the guys sitting behind the computers will do all that too. They'll be making the obnoxious speeches. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in a minute or so with more news from a Chonyu perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 26th, 2017, as we're going through the news. And in Europe, there was another terrorist incident. Allahu Akbar, Brussels machete man shot after attacking soldiers. Soldiers in Brussels, Belgium, have shot a man after he attacked soldiers with a machete, injuring two. The incident took place in the Belgian capital at around 8:30. According to the report, early reports indicate the attacker, who is thought to be alive but in critical condition, was a 30-year-old Somalian who shouted Allahu Akbar as he launched his attack. One of the victims has been left with a head injury. There is a heavy police presence in the area, and public transport has been restricted. This is in Brussels. So that story there. And then President Trump has signed sanctions banning purchase of Venezuela state oil company debt. The The interesting thing, the thing that really gets you about Venezuela, it has the largest oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. Oil reserves, oil in the ground. And so it has a state-owned company that's, pumping that stuff out. So when Chavez came to power, the previous president, he doubled the payroll of that company, basically, without increasing production. And in so doing, he reduced poverty, which was okay as long as oil was selling at a much higher price than it is now. But then Chavez died and Maduro took over. Oil prices came down, and things are terrible. Now 82% of Venezuelans are living in poverty, and but Maduro and his cronies are able to ride above that. And now that state-owned oil company is actually, it's so expensive for them to operate that Venezuela prefers to import oil from other countries. Even though it has all sorts of oil, in the ground, it doesn't want it. It's too expensive to dig it out because the company is so inefficient. So they're importing oil. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Friday banning Americans from dealing in Venezuelan government debt or that of its state-run oil company. The move is expected to further cripple the ability of Venezuelan socialist elites to maintain lavish lifestyles while most of the populace suffers from the near-complete collapse of the economy under socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro. The president's new action prohibits dealings in new debt and equity issued by the government of Venezuela and its state oil company. A statement from the White House reads, it also prohibits dealings in certain existing bonds owned by the Venezuelan public sector, as well as dividend payments to the government of Venezuela. The statement claimed that the new order would not harm the Venezuelan people. To mitigate harm to the American and Venezuelan people, the Treasury Department is issuing general licenses that allow for transactions that would otherwise be prohibited by the executive order, the statement reads. These include provisions allowing for a 30-day wind-down period, financing for most commercial trade, including the export and import of petroleum, transactions only involving Citgo, the dealings in select existing Venezuelan debt, and the financing for humanitarian goods to Venezuela. Banks with the pre-existing bonds, including Goldman Sachs, which bought $2.8 billion in Venezuelan bonds this year, will not be directly affected. However, the executive order prohibits the issuing of new bonds. The action follows Vice President Mike Pence addressing a crowd of Venezuelans and Venezuelan Americans at a lunch in Doral, South Florida, this week, promising the Trump administration would act against the regime. Our resolve is unwavering. Our conviction is clear, Pence declared. You may be assured, under the leadership of President Donald Trump, the United States of America will continue to bring the full measure of American economic and diplomatic power to bear until democracy is restored in Venezuela. We hear you. We stand with you. We will not stand by as Venezuela crumbles, he added. Venezuela is becoming a failed state. That's what it's becoming. It's just incredible what's happened there. But that shows that shows what eventually happens with a socialist country. Chavez came to power based on a populist. He was on a populist platform, and he said, "Okay, I will get rid of poverty." But what he's done, the effect of what he's done, is to make everybody poor, except for a few elite class around the president himself. Following Maduro's decision to create an illegal alternate legislature known as the National Constituent Assembly, designed to consolidate his authority, the Trump administration placed personal sanctions on Maduro and 13 senior Venezuelan officials on grounds of human rights abuses, corruption, and undermining democracy. The crisis in Venezuela has now reached a breaking point, with millions of people living in abject poverty as a result of skyrocketing rates of inflation that have left the country with chronic shortages of food, medicine, electricity, and sanitary products. Venezuela used to be the most prosperous country in South America. Most prosperous to now dirt poor, failed state, more than 80% living in poverty, people living with chronic shortages of food, medicine, electricity, and sanitary products. The military is in charge of food distribution, which means that the food goes to Maduro supporters. The United States reiterates our call that Venezuela restore democracy, hold free and fair elections, release all political prisoners immediately and unconditionally, and end the repression of the Venezuelan people. We continue to stand with the people of Venezuela during these trying times, the White House added. This month, President Trump did not dismiss the possibility of military action in Venezuela. Venezuela is a mess. It's a very dangerous mess and a very sad situation, Trump said. We have many options for Venezuela. I'm not ruling out military options. Well, I don't think that, he said that in response to a question from a reporter. And I think the reporter was basically setting up the president, because America never takes military options off the table, never should take military options off the table. But obviously, military option against Venezuela would be a very, very extremely unwise choice. There's no reason to become military involved in there. Economically and diplomatically, there are many things that America can do now, including this executive order. But eventually the people of Venezuela have to take ownership over their own country, and the majority of the people have to rise up there and bring down that government themselves. This is why it's so important for the population to have access to the tools that enable that kind of an action. But in Venezuela, former Chavista prosecutor accuses Maduro of profiting from food rations. And Venezuela's recently ousted Prosecutor General Luisa Ortega Diaz has accused socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro of personally profiting from food rations amid the country's widespread humanitarian crisis. Attending a regional trade summit in Brazil, Ortega accused Maduro of profiting off of the government's food rationing delivery system, claiming that the Mexican company behind it, quote, is presumably owned by Nicolas Maduro, unquote, despite being registered under other names. Quote, I want to denounce in front of the world a grave situation in Venezuela, that of excessive corruption, unquote, Ortega said at the conference. Quote, because of that reason, the Maduro administration is violating the Constitution and law to protect itself. Quote, in Venezuela, there are no guarantees that any investigation related to organized crime, terrorism, drug trafficking ends in conviction, because the most probable outcome is that the key evidence disappears because there are many interests in corruption not being investigated, she continued. She also accused high-ranking Chavista Diosdado Cabello of illicitly profiting from the Brazilian firm Odebrecht, which has admitted to bribing governments across Latin America to the tune of $100 million. The scandal-plagued firm allegedly won $300 billion in Venezuelan construction contracts. However, many of their projects remain unfinished. Responding to Ortega's statements, Henrique Radonsky, the opposition governor of Miranda State, urged her to get to the bottom of the corruption scandal. The people need to know who is stealing their money and how much they've robbed, he said in a statement. If they hadn't stolen the income of the Venezuelans, we would never be in this economic situation of shortages, hunger, and poverty. The allegations of corruption are all the more shocking given Venezuela's current economic predicament. Amidst skyrocketing inflation, the country's monthly minimum wage has fallen to under $6. And monthly minimum wage has fallen to under $6. And there are chronic shortages of food, medicine, electricity, and basic sanitary products. Ortega fled Venezuela this week with her husband for Colombia after taking a speedboat to the island of Aruba and then flying to the capital of Bogota. Ortega, who for years served as a pro-government attorney general and loyalist to the late Hugo Chavez, was fired by Maduro's Nationalist Constituent Assembly, a fraudulent legislative body, after she began filing charges of human rights abuses against the regime's security forces. Following her departure, Venezuelan authorities broadcasted a raid on Ortega's home on national television with images showing officers rifling through luxury items such as designer clothes, fine wines, and signed artworks belonging to the former Attorney General. The replacement Attorney General, Tariq William Saab, has in turn accused Ortega herself of grave moral and ethical infractions, and last week unveiled a number of corruption charges against her, including claims she ran an extortion gang by funneling profits into an offshore account, as well as blaming her for the deaths of protesters during the widespread anti-government demonstrations that have taken place since April. Yesterday, Ortega confirmed she would return to Colombia, where Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos has confirmed he will grant asylum. It is not yet clear whether she will accept it. Venezuela. How far can they go? How low can they go? How low can they go? All right, let's take a break. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back then with our final hour of the King's Report this morning.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 26th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Chanyeok, Hyungjin Moon. The U.S. military has issued a correction of an earlier story about those North Korean missiles that were fired into the Sea of Japan. When in the story that we read, it said that 3 were fired, 2 traveled 155 miles, and one of them blew up, exploded almost immediately after launch. But no, now they're changing that and saying that no, there was no failure, that they were all successful. If I can get that out here. They had earlier said that failed at flight. One had blown up almost immediately. The U.S. Pacific Command has since revised its evaluation on the missile launch, now reporting no missile failures in line with the South Korean military assessment. So anyway, that was a correction. So those 3 missiles fired out of North Korea were all successful. No failures by the North Koreans. So that just shows that North Korea is getting better and better at its technology. Their rate of failure is getting pretty low. That's bad news for us. Let's update the situation on Hurricane Harvey. Now it has been downgraded again to Category 1 as of an hour ago. It already delivered a 1-2 punch to the Gulf Coast of Texas, making landfall twice with powerful wind gusts and the threat of catastrophic flooding. It was still threatening to be the most powerful storm to hit the Lone Star State in more than a decade. In terms of damage, it looks like there's still no report of damage, but again, damage, people related to first responders are not able to get out and to check on coastal areas. Much as 3 feet of rain is expected in the hardest hit areas. So it's still a very serious situation going on there. Let's look at some of the headlines then on Drudge Report that we haven't yet covered. There are headlines on the Hurricane Harvey. Historic storm hits Gulf Coast, developing. It's a monster. Buildings collapse. Thousands lose power. You will remember this for the rest of your life. Locations uninhabitable for months? ? Mayor tells non-evacuees to put their social security numbers on their arm, so their dead bodies can be identified. Some stock up for parties. Houston flooding fears. Corpus Christi eerily quiet. State officials give conflicting advice. Some say go, some say don't. I guess you have to make up your own mind. White House response tested. PTSD and Katrina survivors. So forth. Harvey slams Texas 40 inches of rain. And looking at some of them that we haven't covered. Yellen's swan song. That's Yellen would be the Janet Yellen, the head of the Federal Reserve Board. Distances from president, defends regulation. Update: Wall Street banks sending warning signals. Investors pull billions. Great Gatsby mansion listed by Big Short icon. Yellen's speech in Jackson Hole may doom her chances for a second term as Fed chairman. Was Fed chairwoman Janet Yellen's Friday speech in Jackson Hole her swan song? Some Fed watchers think that might turn out to be the case. Yellen used her high-profile podium to give a robust defense of the regulation put in place under the Obama administration in the aftermath of the financial crisis. She disagreed with the position of President Donald Trump and congressional Republicans that the regulatory burden is strangling lending and has hamstrung the economy. Yellen's decision to defend core regulations will strengthen the hands of those within the administration who do not favor her reappointment and likely reduces her chances of gaining a second term as chair, said Krishna Guha, a former senior Fed staffer and now vice chairman of Evercore ISI. The Fed chairwoman's remarks at the annual Wyoming Central Bank Conference may not deter the deregulatory zeal of the Trump administration, but does highlight the challenges of, quote, moving deregulation through the regulatory agency staffed with people who have strong memories of the financial crisis, unquote, Guo added. A spokesman for the Fed declined to comment on the speculation. Paul Ashworth, a chief U.S. economist at Capital Economics, agreed. Yellen's passionate defense of the post-crisis tightening of federal regulation isn't going to go down particularly well at the White House. Before Jackson Hole, Fed watchers thought Gary Cohn, Trump's chief economic advisor, was the favorite to become the next Fed chair. But analysts noted that Trump is not likely to be very happy with Cohn either. The New York Times reported that Cohn drafted a letter of resignation in the wake of Trump's remarks about the violence at a Charlottesville, Virginia white nationalist rally, but Cohn told the Financial Times that he decided to stay on in the administration because he did not want to be forced out by neo-Nazis. Former Fed Governor Mark Olson urged Cohn not to accept the Fed job if Trump offers it to him. He might be one of the top financial market analysts in the world, but he's a beginner at monetary policy, and you cannot come in as the chair of the Fed as a beginner and not understand the way monetary policy works, Olson said on CNBC. He pointed out that the last beginner who ran the Fed was G. William Miller, an investment banker appointed to the post by President Jimmy Carter. Miller led the Fed for a little more than a year in the late 1970s, and it did not go well, Olson said. Other candidates mentioned as possible replacement for Yellen are former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, Stanford economist John Taylor, and Columbia University economics professor Glenn Hubbard. Well, Yellen is apparently looking to get out of that position and does not want to continue, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Let's look at the Wall Street Journal article on what Yellen actually said. Trump gets yellow light from Yellen on bank deregulation. Fed chairwoman defends bank regulation at Jackson Hole, but opens the door to change. It's the Wall Street Journal article this morning. Federal Reserve Chairman Janet Yellen delivered a wide-ranging defense of post-crisis financial regulation on Friday that nonetheless could have mildly positive implications for investors in bank stocks. Speaking at the Jackson Hole Summit, Ms. Yellen opened the door to at least one step that would provide substantial relief for Wall Street banks, simplifying the Volcker Rule. The rule, which bars institutions taking insured deposits from making speculative bets, bars institutions taking insured deposits from making speculative bets with their own money, has resulted in a massive downsizing of trading operations at major banks. Many on Wall Street say they agree with the rule in principle, but they argue that its enforcement is too complex, involving up to 5 different federal agencies. A study last year by the Federal Reserve found that the rule has hurt the functioning of bond markets, so it isn't entirely surprising that Ms. Yellen would be open to some changes. Still, her formal acknowledgement that the Volcker Rule could be simplified is a clear positive for banks with large trading operations such as Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase. On the sensitive issue of capital requirements, though, Ms. Yellen was more circumspect. The White House's financial deregulation plan, unveiled in June, pointed out that the biggest U.S. banks are required to hold more capital than their international peers, potentially making them less competitive. Gary Cohn, director of the White House Economic Council and former president of Goldman Sachs, publicly complained in February that the U.S. banks were way out front of where the European banks are in capital. Ms. Yellen, however, highlighted the positive side of higher capital cushions, saying fast actions in the U.S. to raise capital levels has resulted in a return of lending growth and profitability among U.S. banks more quickly than among their global peers. While not conclusive, these comments suggest the Fed would look less favorably than the Trump administration on efforts to weaken capital rules. That matters because it is the Fed, through its annual stress testing process, that effectively sets capital requirements for the biggest banks. It remains unclear if Ms. Yellen would will remain Fed chairman after her term ends in February. A more deregulation-minded individual like Mr. Cohen could be the person to take her place. But for as long as she is in the seat, the Trump administration will get only a yellow light from the Fed to loosen constraints on banks. The Fed. Its role in the American economy is taken for granted by most people since it was instituted in the early 20th century, almost 100 years ago. But is this necessary? The Chinese Constitution says no. The Chinese Constitution outlaws as unconstitutional any organization such as the Federal Reserve Board. It specifically says that central banks are not allowed. No central bank is allowed. And in U.S. history, there were attempts early in the 19th century to establish a central bank. And then that was gotten rid of, and then later in the 20th century, the Fed came in, and people talk about the Great Depression, but actually that seems to have been made worse by the actions of the Fed. And the United States would have recovered more quickly if the Fed did not exist at that time, because of the actions that it took actually made the situation worse and made the depression last longer. And now talk about monetary policy, but leaving monetary policy up to the free market would probably work much better. And that is the assumption under the Constitution of the United States of Chernihiv, that leaving the money supply and the monetary policy up to the free market is the best way to go. And Yellen obviously does not agree with that. Cohen, former president of Goldman Sachs, probably doesn't agree with that either. I'm not sure. I don't think we're going to get anyone as the next Fed chairman who would move us in that direction. But events, I guess, will move us in that direction at some point. If there's a great economic collapse, then the limitations of the Fed will be obvious then. Other headlines: when are you really random? After age 24. Let's open that up to see what that's about. And while we're waiting for that to come up, Trump tells Mattis to indefinitely ban transgender recruits. We covered that already. Box office disaster, movie going slows to standstill. Google admits fake traffic. Let's also look at that after we come back after a short break. Let's take a break now.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 26th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Youngjin Moon. We have a cool morning here in northeast Pennsylvania, around 50 degrees now as the sun is coming up. We were in the upper 40s before sunrise. And we're following our Hurricane Harvey that made landfall on the Texas coast last night, and has now been downgraded to a Category 1. It was a Category 4 when it made the landfall, but it is now down to a Category 1, but it is sort of settling in over that area between Corpus Christi and Houston, and it's bringing lots and lots and lots of rain, strong winds, storm surge, and bad situation. Fortunately, we don't have reports of loss of a human life yet. But really the first responders are not able to get out and check on people, and that may be the reason. New York Times has an interesting story. When are you really random? After age 24. The ability to behave randomly can be a great asset. Think of a mouse trying to outrun a cat. Moving in an erratic, unpredictable way makes it harder to catch. In humans, this sort of behavior is thought to be linked to creativity and cognitive complexity, but understanding the mind's capacity to produce randomness is difficult. Recently, a team from Europe pitted humans and computers against one another in a series of tasks designed to measure random choice-making. Around age 25, the researchers determined people are best able to produce a random result. Traditionally, computational tools for studying random behavior have been limited, according to the author of the study, published in Sweden. His team compiled 5 tasks of randomness. These included mimicking a series of random coin flips or dice rolls, guessing which card would appear when selected from a randomly shuffled deck, or arranging a grid of black and white boxes to look random. More than 3,400 people from 4 to 91 years old participated in the experiment. The researchers assessed how participants did by using software to generate algorithmic shortcuts for people's responses. The sequences that were hardest for the computer to account for were considered the most random. Measuring how participants performed against several factors, including age, sex, and educational background, the researchers found a strong trend only with age. On average, performance improved from childhood to the mid-20s. It then stayed relatively high until the 60s, after which it began to decline. For those over 60, though, there was no need to fret. Not only was the difference between the participants aged 25 and those 60s relatively small, but there are probably other trade-offs influencing creative capacity, Dr. Zanil said. For instance, you may be less able to produce randomness, but have much more experience to draw from, he said. Kind of interesting, huh? Kind of interesting. LA's response to homeless experiment isn't working. Let's see what the headline is here. LA's response to homeless encampments isn't working, councilman says. Wow. You have this photograph of tents all up and down a sidewalk. Amid rising homelessness and mounting outcry from residents and business owners, a Los Angeles city councilman said Wednesday he wants to take a hard look at the way the city responds to the increasing presence of encampments and recreational vehicles. What we have isn't working, Councilman Mitchell Englander said. In recent months, the issue of homelessness has become inescapable, with residents encountering more homelessness in their neighborhoods, according to the councilman who represents the Northwest San Fernando Valley. There's not a conversation here, whether it's fixing a street, trimming a tree, walking to school, or going to a grocery store, where we don't talk about homelessness, he said. Out of Los Angeles City Councilman Joe Buscaino's office, ditto, said spokesman Branimir Kvartu. We're very, very conscious of it, Kvartu said. It's a battle every day. Englander also has been hearing concerns from city officials tasked with enforcing rules around encampments and recreational vehicles, he said. San Pedro has battled similar issues, with encampments rooted around the community's historic post office and waterfront overlook park, though Kvartu points out that other parts of the city, such as Venice, have much bigger problems with homelessness. Robert Nizik, an attorney with offices inside San Pedro's main post office, sends out a round-robin email featuring daily photos of the sidewalk and park scene outside his office windows. The condition grows worse daily, and nothing is done to permanently solve the issue, he wrote in a recent email. New faces pop up just like their tents. Whack-a-mole does not work. A consistent and sustained effort on a daily basis is required. I'm not sure homeless people appreciate being compared to moles, but anyway, his intent with the emails, which go out to city and business leaders every day, is to keep the issue front and center until authorities find permanent solution to a situation he and others say is ruining the town. Basically, they occupy the street, Nizik told the Daily Breeze in a January 2016 interview. If they're told to move, they moved to the park across the street, then back again. It's an ebb and flow, like the ocean. According to Englander, Los Angeles police officers, along with transportation and sanitation officials, say the resources we have and the ordinance we have in place need help in fixing. Los Angeles voters recently passed a pair of tax measures expected to bring in more money to build housing and provide services to the city's growing homeless population. But some say changes are happening too slowly. Residents and business owners have taken to social media, such as the Save San Pedro Facebook page, and in some cases submitted petitions and organized protests to demand that city leaders enforce existing city policies that are aimed at removing illegally erected encampments and hauling away large vehicles that are improperly parked on city streets. Saying he wants to treat the issue of homelessness as a crisis, Englander on Wednesday responded with 4 motions that will take a comprehensive look at current rules and methods for addressing homelessness in Los Angeles. He said he wants to pare this examination of the city's enforcement policies with efforts to get more homeless people into housing and set up with jobs. Two of the motions introduced Wednesday are aimed at reevaluating a recently adopted policy for regulating homeless encampments. The city last year began enforcing an ordinance known as 5611, which sets up rules for, quote, the storage of personal property in the public right-of-way, unquote. It requires that city officials give advance notice before taking down homeless encampments and removing other personal property that blocks public sidewalks and areas. The ordinance was enacted to create a balance of the needs of the public to access clean and sanitary public areas consistent with their intended uses, unquote, which with the needs of the people who are homeless and have no other alternative for the storage of personal property, unquote, according to one of the motions. Some city leaders have complained that under the 5611 regulation, homeless encampments are merely taken down in one place and set up soon after in another location nearby. An effort to set up a storage facility near an elementary school in San Pedro failed last year amid an uproar of protests. The issue, at the request of LAPD's Harbor Division, will be revisited soon, Cavartu said, with the police station in San Pedro offered as a potential location. Englander and Boscaino are calling for sanitation and police department officials to give an overview of which aspects of the ordinance have worked, which aspects have not worked as well, and the effect that ordinance has on Los Angeles city communities. In his second motion on the issue, Englander says he wants to look into making HOPE teams, which are made up of police officers who work with sanitation workers to remove and clean up encampment areas that are illegally set up. With the ordinance expected to expire next year, Englander and Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez say it should be evaluated. Issue of homelessness has been around for a long time, and no one has been able to come up with a real solution. You talk about housing and so forth and getting people jobs. Of course, getting people jobs becomes more difficult if the minimum wage keeps going up because businesses cannot afford to hire people. If there were no minimum wage, in other words, if minimum wage were zero, and if the wages were actually determined by the free market forces of supply and demand, then it would be a lot easier to get jobs and probably be able to solve a lot of this homelessness naturally that way. Part of homelessness has partly to do with breakdown of the family. In other words, when people get into trouble financially, lose their homes, they often don't have the extended family as a safety network that they can fall back on. And another reason is that the over-regulation, we have so many regulations that it's difficult for people to start businesses. In Chonegu society, under the Chonegu Constitution, we envision a society that has many, many small and medium-sized businesses where people are able to start businesses easily, hire easily, fire easily, start businesses easily, close businesses easily, because there is a very little regulation of these businesses. And people will succeed and fail primarily based on their reputation and their ability to market themselves to the community around them. And of course, not all businesses will succeed. Many will fail. Maybe a majority will fail. But if you fail a business, then it'd be easy to start another one. So as more and more people are able to find a niche in the market that they're able to serve and to have be able to sustain a business, then people will be able to accumulate wealth, be able to accumulate property, in other words, accumulate wealth, real assets, in terms of real estate, gold and silver, and these kinds of real assets. And if someone in the extended family is successful, then that person can take care of the other members of that extended family, help them either in a time of crisis or help them get businesses started, especially as young people. And so in Cheongguk society, I expect that that the homelessness will be much less of a problem, if it's a problem at all. At least much less of a problem than it is now. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. Many of the homeless people are veterans who come back and have difficulty assimilating back into their previous lives, into their families, and into their jobs. And the veterans deserve to be treated a lot better, a lot better. President Trump is trying to reform the Veterans Administration to provide a better health care for veterans. And what Los Angeles is trying to do, I guess, focusing on the police and sanitation officials, removing tents and other personal property, that will perhaps be a Band-Aid on a large wound, but probably not even that. With this kind of a response, I expect that it will continue to grow. The problem will continue to grow, especially if we have an economic turndown. Yeah. Especially if that happens, this problem is going to get huge. All right, let's take a short break, and we'll be back with more news from a Cheongguk perspective after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, August 26th, 2017. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. Tonight, Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. The fight is tonight, finally here. And let's see, this is a Bloomberg. No matter who wins Mayweather-McGregor, the biggest loser is HBO. The final bout of Money Mayweather's career is also his last chance to stick it to the doubters one more time. Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s defensive genius has made him the easiest boxer in history for opponents to miss. Early on, it was the high-powered promoters and executives who failed to accurately assess his earning potential. Money Mayweather still hasn't forgotten. For the last bout of his career, Mayweather is avenging the perceived slights he suffered at the beginning of his illustrious career. Renowned as a fiendishly driven gambler, the greatest bet Mayweather placed was the $750,000 he laid down on himself in 2006, when he rejected an $8 million contract for a fight and bought out his contract with the Top Rank in order to promote himself. Though his opponent this weekend will be MMA star Conor McGregor, a welcoming ancillary target for Mayweather is HBO. With no real challengers remaining in boxing this year, Mayweather turned to the UFC and its biggest star, Conor McGregor. According to insiders, he timed the announcement and staged the fight in a manner designed to deal maximum damage to his former network partner HBO and two of their biggest pay-per-view fights in 2017. Begin with the choice of August 26th fight date. It's perverse, said Jim Lampley, HBO Boxing's longtime commentator from his home in San Diego. If there's one indelible accepted principle in operating pay-per-view, it's never before Labor Day. That's why, for the upcoming HBO bout between middleweight title holder Gennady Golovkin and former champ Canelo Alvarez, one of boxing's best tilts on paper in years, the channel jumped on September 16th to maximize the number of pay-per-view buys, assuming that Showtime would choose a later date in the fall for Mayweather-McGregor. Instead, Mayweather-McGregor was set for August 26th, creating a tidal wave of publicity that is currently drowning the lead-up to the Canelo-Golovkin fight. To rub salt in HBO's wound, Mayweather announced his fight against McGregor on June 14th, 3 days before Andre Ward, an HBO world champion fighter who inherited the pound-for-pound crown from Floyd, fought a rematch against Sergey Kovalev. In 30 years of pay-per-view TV, only 2 fights performed worse than Ward-Kovalev 2. Mayweather's announcement didn't help those numbers. Steven Espinoza, executive vice president of Showtime Sports, has said in previous interviews that the match came together quickly and that the fighters simply didn't want to wait until November to rumble. Sources at Showtime were unavailable to speak on the record at press time. Among media watchers, the idea that the last weekend in August was an open runway with no sports competition could have made it an irresistible, if counterintuitive, target date. That is small comfort to the folks at HBO. Quote, everybody in boxing is doing the best they can without being overwhelmingly defensive to make the point that there's a great fight coming up, Lampley continued. But it's not the August 26th. But it's not on August 26th. It's on September 16th. Mayweather's beef with HBO goes back to 1997. Lou DiBella, then an executive at HBO, remembers how the brash 20-year-old, then 126-pound Floyd Mayweather Jr. responded to the contract offer DiBella had just pushed across the table. It would guarantee Mayweather 7 figures each for a series of fights. In DiBella's telling, Mayweather glanced up in disgust. "This is a slave contract," the fighter said. True, Mayweather had emerged the year before as a blue-chip prospect, an Olympic bronze medalist from the Atlanta Olympic Games, who hailed from one of the most accomplished boxing families in the sport, but he had yet to find a fan base or demonstrate any ability to sell tickets, let alone pay-per-view shows. Mayweather had fought and won 12 times in the previous year, but his defensive counter-punching style didn't stir the kind of excitement boxing fans craved in the wrecking ball era of Mike Tyson. Nor was there any indication that Mayweather's star power would ever compete with that of boxing's undefeated golden boy Oscar De La Hoya, second only to Tyson. Not only had De La Hoya, an Olympic gold medalist, owned world titles in 4 weight classes, he had just defeated a Hall of Fame legend in Parnell Whitaker. With boxing's audience trending heavily towards Latino demographics, Mayweather's risk-averse fighting style was widely recognized as anathema to those markets that prioritized action and excitement over technical chess matches, no matter how sublime in the ring. Mayweather eventually signed, but as soon as he had the leverage to leave, he started his own production in 2006. He wanted HBO to guarantee him $20 million to fight De La Hoya, and the network refused. So he paid $750,000 to get out of the deal. And if he couldn't sell per pay-per-view buys on his own name, he would ruthlessly stalk those who could. He landed his first self-produced fight on June 25, 2005, against boxing fan favorite Arturo Gatti, whom Mayweather publicly cited as a club fighter. He promptly disposed of Gatti with such ease, club fighter seemed a charitable designation. After winning 2 more pay-per-view fights, Mayweather lured De La Hoya into a dream match on May 5, 2007. it became the most lucrative fight in the history of the sport, generating 2.4 million pay-per-view buys. 2 years after HBO had refused to give him $20 million to fight De La Hoya, Mayweather had arranged it on his own and made $25 million. From here, he made another calculation that none of his detractors could see for themselves. If Mayweather could never sell tickets or pay-per-views with fans cheering him on to win, he would sell even better by enticing the public to pay for the opportunity to watch him lose. Pretty boy Floyd Mayweather Jr. transformed into Money Mayweather. He gained exposure on the WWE and Dancing with the Stars. He fought 11 more times on pay-per-view, generating over $1.3 billion in pay-per-view revenue that helped make him the highest-paid athlete in sports. Of boxing's 5 highest-grossing pay-per-view fights, Mayweather owns the top 3. If his upcoming bout against McGregor brings in an audience of 50 million people as expected, he will have produced the 3 biggest pay-per-view events of all time in the past 2 years. Mayweather's opponent in the ring, Conor McGregor, is expected to earn as much as $100 million win or lose. Mayweather's cut is anticipated to be at least twice that. All evidence points to the fact that McGregor is preparing to emulate the 40-year-old's business model. And McGregor doesn't appear to be eager to join the HBO fold either. In 2014, he took a break from training in Las Vegas to watch the rematch between Mayweather and Marcos Maidana. That was a year after Mayweather turned his back on a highly lucrative HBO offer and signed a 6-fight, $250 million deal with Showtime that effectively anointed the network as boxing's premium brand. He stole my blueprint and ran with it, Mayweather said of McGregor during a session at his gym on August 10th. That contract had essentially shut the door on any possibility for a Mayweather-Pacquiao mega fight, which for 4 years had been the biggest fight available. But once Manny Pacquiao, boxing's second biggest star after Mayweather, lost by one of the most iconic knockouts of the decade to Juan Manuel Marquez, Mayweather had the leverage. He chose to calcify the Cold War-type dynamic between Showtime and HBO even further by fighting only on the lucrative dates available for pay-per-view, daring HBO to compete against him. It seems that there's never enough for Mayweather. Even for a fight that is largely being dismissed as a pocket-lining scheme, he's still earning more in a night than anyone in the history of sports. The fight itself will likely generate more than $500 million in pay-per-view revenue. The gate will reach nearly $100 million, toppling the previous record of $72.2 million for the Pacquiao fight. International broadcast rights could bring in an upward of another $100 million. Tens of millions in additional sponsored dollars are readily available, yet Mayweather still needs others to fail. I don't know how far back you have to go to find a fight so guaranteed to generate combustion, Jim Lampley said with exasperation of his September Canelo Golovkin fight. You almost never see matchups this good. A can't-miss fight. But that all played into making it too great a target for the Mayweather-McGregor attraction to resist. The last time Mayweather lost was in 1996 in a highly controversial decision at the semifinals of the Atlantic Olympic Games to Bulgarian Serafin Todorov. Even the Egyptian referee for the bout assumed Mayweather had won the bout and held Mayweather's hand aloft just as Todorov was announced as the winner. It would seem a mistake to bet against him now. Lou DiBella still goes back to that meeting 20 years ago. I was born 5 years after Rocky Marciano knocked out Archie Moore and retired undefeated, he says. Look at all the great fighters who came after Marciano. How many from all those great fighters walked away undefeated? Only one of them did, Mayweather. That cocky kid in my office who promised he would actually pull it off. He's the only one in my lifetime who did it. Boxing. All about the money. Well, congratulations to Mayweather for having won so much money during his lifetime, during his career. And I guess it's important to him. Anyway, the Mayweather-McGregor fight is tonight. And so I guess we pretty much know where our king will be this evening. New York Post also has an article on this fight. Pop stars, athletes, actors, and strippers, a night out with Floyd Mayweather. I guess he's having a good time. It is 9:27 p.m. on Thursday when one Ferrari, one Lamborghini, and four massive SUVs slowly turn into a shopping center parking lot and drive through a Chinese archway to get to Mayweather Boxing Club. The Rolls Royces are already there. Anyway, apparently they're building the hype. They're building the hype for this fight tonight. And win or lose, hundreds of millions of dollars, or I guess 100 million for McGregor, I guess twice that for Mayweather. Google is issuing refunds to advertising over fake traffic. Google is issuing refunds for ads that run on websites with fake traffic. People familiar with the situation said, as the web giant develops a tool to give marketers more transparency about the ads they buy through its platform. In the past few weeks, the Alphabet Inc. unit has informed hundreds of marketers and ad agency partners about the issue with invalid traffic known in the industry as ad fraud. The ads were bought using the company's DoubleClick Bid Manager over the course of a few months this year, primarily in the second quarter. Google's refunds amount to only a fraction of the cost of the ads served to invalid traffic, which has left some advertising executives unsatisfied, the people familiar with the situation said. Google has offered to reimburse its platform fee, which ad buyers said typically ranges from about 7 to 10% of the total purchase. The company says this is appropriate because it doesn't control the rest of the money spent. Typically, advertisers use DoubleClick Bid Manager to target audiences across vast numbers of websites in seconds by connecting to dozens of online ad exchanges, marketplaces that connect buyers and publishers through real-time auctions. The ad spending flows through to the exchanges. The problems arise when ads run on publishers' sites with fraudulent traffic, including those where clicks are generated by software programs known as bots instead of humans. This is an issue of growing concern to marketers. It is difficult to recoup money paid to those sites when the issue is discovered too late. Advertisers often receive small credits from Google and their other ad tech vendors when they detect discrepancies, but in this case, for some buyers, the instance of fraud discovered was larger than usual. It's the latest evidence of how the complexity of the digital advertising system can cause tensions between Madison Avenue and big players like Google. I've run websites in the past where we depended on Google ads for revenue, and we were a publisher, in other words, and so we were on the other end of this equation. And in the past, they used to have click factories. So basically, I don't think they do that anymore. But they used to sometimes they would, in the past, they would hire people to sit there and click on ads. But now they've become much more sophisticated. They use these programs called bots. That bots are basically small pieces of program that run around the internet, doing various things. And one of the things that I guess that they're programmed to do nowadays is to click on ads. Anytime you click on an ad, you're costing somebody money, right? Because if I go to a web page and I see an ad that interests me and I click on it, then the advertiser then is paying a certain amount of money to Google and also to the publisher of that site. And and as long as that's a real human being that is doing that clicking, then everybody's okay, everybody's happy. But if it is a bot who is not actually going to purchase anything and is not a human being, then that's where the problem comes. And it used to be called click fraud. I guess they've changed that now to ad fraud because no longer it's clicking that's involved. But it's a cat and mouse thing. The criminals get it is criminal because you're basically stealing. If you're inventing, if you're sending these bots out to click on ads fraudulently. It is stealing, and so the criminals get sophisticated. The people who are trying to stop them get sophisticated. So it's up and up and up and up and up. So it's a kind of a war going on there, a competition going on there. Let's see, we're coming now to the end of our broadcast. I was going to go into this article on the special prosecutor Mueller, but it doesn't look like we'll have enough time, but let's just take a peek. It says that the Mueller turns up the heat on Mike Flynn. The special prosecutor is really putting pressure on Manafort, the President Trump's former campaign manager last year, trying to get Manafort to flip on Trump. And also he's examining possible role Mike Flynn played in seeking Clinton emails from hackers. Mueller probe and potential link between Trump campaign and Russia follows trail of GOP operative correspondence. What role, if any, former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn may have played in a private effort to obtain Hillary Clinton's emails from Russian hackers, according to people familiar with the matter. If it was Russian hackers, because other people say that it was those emails were not hacked, they were copied. The effort to seek out hackers who were believed, you see. We don't have the proof, we're believed to have stolen Ms. Clinton's emails, first reported by the Wall Street Journal, was led by a longtime Republican activist, Peter W. Smith. In correspondence and conversations with his colleagues, Mr. Smith portrayed Mr. Flynn as an ally in those efforts and implied that other senior Trump campaign officials were coordinating with him, which they have denied. He also named Mr. Flynn's consulting firm and his son in the correspondence conversation. So Mueller continues to try to find something anywhere, continues to look under every stone, leaving no stone unturned, trying to find a way to get at Trump. And so that effort continues. But nothing of consequence yet, at least that we know of. All right, so have a good day. This is the end of this broadcast of the King's Report, and the King will be giving Sunday service tomorrow, and I'm sure it will be an exciting sermon. And, of course, on Monday, there will be no King's Report because we are having a holy day on Monday. The 7-1 and 7-8 festivals are on Monday. And so the next King's Report will be on Tuesday morning, and we will hope to see you then. So God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.